welcome to another episode of the Tech Informist. Let's begin. I'm Kevin.
I'm Brad.
And on this episode of the Tech Informist, we are going to talk about Samsung finally releasing the information about the Note 7 disaster.
Is this the Galaxy S8?
First wave of new Xbox update features are shipping to select Xbox insiders.
Google Maps introduces a feature letting users know parking accessibility.
Amazon's new wake word for Echo will have all of the Star Trek geeks smiling.
Google says the voice search space is in its very early days.
The LG G6 is reported to have a Snapdragon 821.
The NES Classic has now been hacked to be able to install 600 games.
And Brian, like a boss, Roper has been caught up in the latest round of Microsoft Layouts. So welcome back, everybody. It's time for another episode of Tech Informist, and we're going to be talking a lot about Samsung because, well, when you think Android smartphones, you think Samsung. And, of course, in 2016, we all know what was the biggest news story when it came to Samsung was the Note 7 disaster. Well, we finally got the autopsy reports from the death of the Note 7, and it was determined to be some pretty shoddy battery manufacturing because, hey, who doesn't want to save a few pennies per device? And it looked like it's going to cost them a whole lot more than they initially expected. So the thing with the battery, they said that something to do with the battery structure. Now, I am definitely not an engineer. I have no idea really about battery technology. It's always something that kind of amazes me, and I know it is something that we probably all take for granted. We just assume that everything's been tested and it meets all the specifications that everybody wants, that needs to be safe, because whenever you're putting these things in your up next to your head, I mean that's pretty serious stuff.
Or, you know, in your pockets. In your pocket, which are also next to important things.
Right. You know, especially if you're male, especially. But even for females, it's not something that you want to have burn up and start catching on fire or explode. Exactly. Because I could not even imagine what it would be like to be talking on a phone and all of a sudden the phone just blows up next to your ear. No, I don't even want to think about that.
Oof.
So there's something called a quote-unquote jelly roll, which appears to be like the outer colored edge, which, yeah, that makes me want to have a donut. Yeah. I'm kind of thinking donuts now. And so you got the jelly roll, you got something called a separator, different layers here. You got the positive tab, the negative tab, positive electrodes, negative electrodes, and what's called the pouch. The abnormal for battery A, because they had two separate batteries. Battery A was the first round of production, and then battery B was the second round after we got an issue. So the first recall, so they went with I don't know if they stayed with the same manufacturer because they didn't give, at least not that I've seen, the name of the manufacturer. But I'm sure that company's probably going out of business.
It's a very real possibility.
Because they have cost Samsung an awful lot of money.
Money, headaches, the way people perceive
Samsung,
them.
Yeah. So the main cause they're saying with battery A was the fact that the negative electrode was deflected in the upper right corner of the battery. And they've got nice illustrations here on the Gizmodo article that we're going to link to in the show notes. And they say that a normal battery has the negative electrode is not deflected. So they've got this where it shows looks like the four right little lines there are more curved than what is on the normal battery. And the normal battery kind of has a little hump there at the corner, whereas the abnormal battery is just more rounded, period. And they said an additional contributing factor was the tip of the negative electrode was incorrectly located in the curve and not the planar area. In the good one, the tip of the negative electrode is correctly located within the planar arena, I guess they were going to call it on this illustration. So they did the recall and said, hey, we need a new battery because we think maybe it's going to be the battery's fault. Second round comes out, and I guess this issue is probably not as widespread because we didn't hear as many reports of problems. But it was one of those things that, oh, Jesus Christ. So the second round is having a problem too. Just recall the whole damn thing. Be done with it. It's over.
Yeah, you can only go so far. You recall the first round, then the second round you have to recall. You don't want to go through a third one because the third one's really going to make a company look bad. And
yeah, and then you're opening yourself up to lawsuits.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know what kind of FCC regulations might even allow for that to happen even.
Yeah, so they said for the Battery B, the main cause on this one was high welding burns on the positive electrode, which resulted in the penetration of the insulation tape and the separator, which then caused direct contact between the positive tab with the negative electrode. That's bad, folks.
Yeah, so welding burns, as in I work on cars for a living. Welding burns meaning arc, an arcing of electricity. That's bad.
That's bad.
You don't want that in your phone.
No. And on the good ones, the positive tab is appropriately attached to the positive electrode. And an additional contributing factor was a number of batteries were missing the insulation tape.
That's also bad.
That's also bad.
Hey, we're going to put everything together except for this piece.
Yeah, so it's kind of a shame. But then again, I mean, it's kind of good that a big company like Samsung got slapped because of using cheap parts. They went with a company, and apparently this battery manufacturer just totally dropped the ball.
Well, and they're trying to be just slightly cheaper than the iPhone, and yet they're one of the more expensive Android phones that you can buy, but yet they're using cheaper parts. That kind of makes me a little worried.
I don't think they're going to be doing this on the S8 and kind of moving forward. To kind of help prevent this issue with the S8 and moving forward, they have implemented an 8-point battery safety check test. I guess step 1, durability test. Then you got a visual inspection, an X-ray, charge and discharge test, TVOC, which is total volatile organic compound. Then you've got a disassembling test, an accelerated usage test, a delta open circuit voltage test.
Yeah, so they're definitely really trying to make sure this never happens again. I mean, 8 steps is a little excessive. However, if they have another misstep like this, it's hard to say where that company could go. I still believe in some ways, you know, kind of like Apple, how even if Apple had made a few missteps here or there, which we're starting to see a few, and maybe even minor things with the new MacBook. If they're to misstep a little bit, like I was saying, they just can't afford it right now.
No. I mean, they're going to be okay financially. I mean, it's not like Samsung is going to get bankrupt or financially ruined because of the Note 7 disaster, but, you know, that public perception really is invaluable. And again, like I mentioned, it's something that I think we kind of all take for granted because there's so many smartphones across the different manufacturers that are created each year. Mm-hmm. And you throw in all these batteries and all this technology and all this different engineering and stuff like that.
It's kind of amazing that something on this level has not happened before.
Exactly. That's what I was kind of alluding to, that nothing like this has really happened. And then you enter into tech blog forums and you look at people discussing. It's like, well, if Samsung would have just kept the removable battery, it probably wouldn't have been as bad. And then you got people saying, well, it would have still been as bad. And it's like, well, it kind of wouldn't have been near as bad because at least it wouldn't have been as expensive on Samsung's part. True. Because they had to refund everything that was already sold, and they just lost everything for that.
Yeah, being as the, you know, if the phone were an openable phone where you could replace the battery, yeah, definitely would have been just a issue of, oh, let's swap the batteries. And if that battery didn't work, oh, let's swap batteries again. Because the phone works, it's the battery that doesn't.
But then again, if those batteries would have been bad or whatever, it still would have damaged the phones.
Yeah.
But at least everybody else wouldn't have had to return their phone. They could have still
swapped out a battery.
Just swapped out a battery. They would have only lost a few thousand phones that they would have had to replace, as opposed to they would have had to send out, we'll just say, 1 million batteries. Throwing that out there as a number. Because I don't know how many of these devices were totally sold. I think it was a couple million or something like that.
It seemed to be quite a few.
Yeah, I mean, I knew 2 or 3 people just in my immediate circle of people that I work and are friends with that had them, and, you know, they hated the fact of having to return it.
Everyone that had that phone did not want to return it.
And as evidenced by last week's story, that Verizon's PO'd that some people haven't returned it. Mm-hmm. Apparently some people still don't want to return it. I just want to roll the dice and put it on the shelf and say, look what I've got.
In some ways, I can't blame them, but in others, it's like you're playing with fire, literally.
Yeah. Literally, yeah. Next up with Samsung, we have a first live look at the Galaxy S8. Not necessarily the S8 Plus, but we know that it's going to be slightly larger. So the regular S8 is going to be 5.8 inches. The larger size is going to be 6.2 inches. So pretty good size displays.
You know, by looking at the picture, it almost looks the same size as last year, except the screen reality is huge. It takes up near the whole, front of the phone.
And the help of this is because they got rid of the physical or the fingerprint sensor that was on the front. So all that gets moved around to the back. Now here is my biggest complaint with this design is the placement of that fingerprint sensor. It is just if you're looking at the back of the device and you're looking at the camera hump, it is to the right of the camera hump. It's not like down in the center where, hey, look at that, where that Samsung label is. That would be a great spot, more comfortable for people to put their finger to unlock their phone.
Easier to reach, too.
So I kind of played around with this on my Nexus 6P, which, again, I still bring it with me. And I tried putting my finger next to where the camera, kind of appropriately where I thought it would be on that device. And I kind of have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of people dropping this phone using this because it's very awkward because you have to... your palm in kind of the center of the phone as opposed to in the lower quarter of the device to kind of reach that. It just seems like it's just too high. Just bad placement. I don't mind them putting it in the back. I think it's great. The majority of other places put it on the back.
Aesthetically, it's very pleasing. However,
exactly,
functionality would tell you that maybe we should have thought about this a little more.
Again, it's just one of the things. I don't want to completely dismiss it that, I wouldn't have one because of that. I will wait and reserve final judgment for actually getting to hold one in my hand and try it out to see if it works.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no way I'm not going to check this phone out. Samsung has put out some really good phones. Not super crazy about their UI, but it's something that can be overlooked and even changed in some aspects. They're kind of top of the line, and there's a reason they're one of the best manufacturers of Android. Well, best in quotations. That's a preference, really.
Two other nice things to notice about this is the fact that there's USB Type-C and a 3.5mm headphone jack. For all you headphone jack fans, hurrah, it's still there. You're still good to go. You don't have to upgrade to Bluetooth headphones. You
don't have to be brave.
Exactly. One of the other things, too, about, again, going back to batteries, the 5.8-inch version is reported to have a 3,000 milliamp hour battery, while the larger 6.2 inches is supposed to have about 3,500. That's probably going to be feasible.
Is it just me, or does that 6.2 sound awfully big?
It sounds awfully large, but again, if this thing is physically the same size as what we're kind of used to, with a 6.2 as opposed to 5.8, obviously it's got to be a little bit larger. But for the display, the physical device could be smaller, but the display is bigger because the bottom quarter of an inch or whatever is where the home screen used to be is gone.
So like the Dell XPS 13 is a 14-inch laptop in the size of a 12-inch or something like that, because of the infinity screen that they use.
Yeah. No bezel.
No bezel, which, again, if you have no bezel, you can fit a bigger screen in it. It makes sense. So, yeah, maybe. I'll be very curious to see the dimensions compared to the old ones. Maybe they are the same. It's just a different front-facing glass. But you got to figure, with all that being glass, it's an easy way to break your phone.
A lot of curves. 12-megapixel rear camera, a Snapdragon 835 going with 4 gig RAM, while a new 64 gig base storage size. So awesome.
Thank goodness.
There we go. Bye-bye 32. That's nice to see. And seeing them do the Snapdragon 835 is nice because we're going to be talking about the importance or not importance of that in our next story, which we're going to touch on in just a few moments. They are talking about the Samsung S8 unveiling to be in New York City on March 29th. So a month after Mobile World Congress.
Unveil in March, release in April. Just kind of what we were thinking.
Speaking of LG, we'll just go ahead and get this little nugget out of the way that there's been more information coming out about the G6. We talked last week about the fact that it's going to be a sealed device, non-removable battery, screen sizes, dimensions, stuff like that. So we've kind of gotten a little bit more info this week about it having the Snapdragon 821.
Instead of the 35.
Right.
For somebody like myself, who's really looking forward to this phone, I'm actually not that worried about it.
Exactly. And when I first read that, I thought, why?
I immediately thought the same thing.
And I was going to say a few other choice words, but I'm going to try to keep it somewhat clean, because I thought, why would they do that? And then I got to thinking, well, the 821 is in the Pixel and the Pixel XL, so those have only been around since October. We're just a few months after that, so it's still a legitimate CPU.
Yeah, OnePlus 3T uses it. It's not like they're using a 2-year-old
Yeah,
chip
they're not using an 810 or something like that.
Yeah, so they're not that far.
Or an 820.
They're not that far behind in order to make the ship dates to ship before Samsung, which could be really important. Because you got to think, the average consumer, they're not going to see, oh, this one has the newer chip. Most of them aren't really going to know that unless Samsung specifically says, we're the only manufacturer to use this new chip. And
if they do a specific marketing campaign, don't buy the G6 because it's got an older chip than we've got.
I don't know. I really think it's going to be fine. I still love my G5, to be honest. I'm really excited for the G6 because I really prefer the more... I'm going to be honest. I kind of prefer the more iPhone-esque phone. Sorry. I love the boring old square. It works. If it's made of metal... Yeah, if it's made of metal and glass, I'm all about it. I don't know.
The thing about the 835, and we've mentioned this on a prior episode as well, is that it is kind of geared more towards the VR, AR stuff. And as we know, Samsung's got a Gear VR headset that's been out a number of years now. It's on its version 2.
Do you think that those will be compatible with the new phones, or will you have to get a whole brand new headset?
No, I don't. I think it'll be fine because with the second generation of the Gear VR, they had an adapter in there for the USB Type-C because it was designed to be able to work with the Note 7, which was their first release with the Type-C.
I was just curious what you thought.
I don't think they need to kind of release another updated version of the Gear VR.
I mean, I would hope not. That would kind of burn a few users. Most of them may not get that for free again. To have to turn around and get it if they really wanted it would kind of suck.
So that's kind of one of the, we'll just say, perks in quotations of the 835 has some of that extra functionality and design for VR, AR stuff. Of course, it's going to be a little bit more power efficient. It's another one of the nice things.
Well, and even the 821 is slightly more power efficient than
the 820
that's in mine. So I'm not really losing out. This remains to be seen. We'll get a review device eventually, I'm sure, and then we can kind of make it. I can make it a choice at that point.
Yeah, it's a single step, not somebody that goes upstairs 2 at a time. Baby steps.
I'm more interested in what kind of screen technologies they're using, what kind of camera technologies, how big the battery is, those kind of things. Like the chip, we're starting to plateau a little.
We're kind of, again, we're spoiled with that. I mean, how much further can you really push a mobile CPU?
Exactly.
Speed-wise. This is more of optimizing the OS and making sure the memory management is taken care of, that it's got enough RAM to handle Android, because we know Android is not, in my opinion, the most efficient OS out there.
I would agree. I mean, after using it for, almost a good solid year now, I like it, but definitely isn't energy efficient.
Yeah.
At times.
You seem to find a lot more apps that, quote-unquote, go rogue and just start sucking your battery dry.
In fact, I had that about 2 weeks ago with Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook went rogue.
Facebook can do that, that's for sure.
And so can its people.
Oh, wow. Look at that. Shots fired. Shots fired. Next story is about the first wave of these new Xbox update features. I think these are kind of geared towards the creators updates and stuff like that. And you can probably speak more on this because you do the insider stuff on,
I do.
On your old console, right?
Yeah. I still have one console that has the regular and one with the newer stuff.
Talk about a first world problem.
I know. I don't know what to do with myself. This is really geared towards, in a way, creators. This is to make it easier to stream, make it easier to create content on the web, but in the same breath, make things more accessible for everyone. And they are redesigning the entire menu. So instead of double-clicking to get over to your menu on the left, it's a one-button press. One button press gets you everywhere.
So everything that I'm slowly getting used to,
you're going to have to relearn.
I'm going to have to relearn.
But it's going to be so
again.
easy because if you've played the 360 before, you already know how this works. It's a one-button press on the Xbox, and then you can do anything. You can play music, you can go to home, you can get your friends, achievements, anything.
That was the generation that I skipped, though, with Microsoft. I had regular Xbox, and I've got an Xbox One, so I skipped 360.
Well, it looks like you're learning anyway.
Okay.
But it's supposed to be, and I'd say that because I haven't played with it yet, and it's not final, but it's supposed to be faster. It's supposed to work better.
Where have we heard that? Seems faster.
Exactly.
It's a Microsoft thing,
I don't know. It remains to be seen. I have a lot of faith in the Xbox guys. They tend to bring things in the right direction. Again, there's Cortana, little things that they've started to introduce, like reminders if you have Cortana on your iPhone or Android or even Windows Phone if you still have one.
What?
What's that? Cortana will remind you on your Xbox, on your phone, anywhere you have it. So that can be nice. So if you're playing a game and you're doing laundry and you forget about laundry easily like I do, you can say, hey, Cortana, remind me to check laundry in an hour or something.
And I can honestly admit that exact thing right there has happened to me, that I will start a load of laundry to wash,
and
then I'll get into a game session, and 3 hours later, it's like, oh, shoot. Well, I remember it after I go to bed, and it's like, oh, man, I've got to go switch the laundry from the washer to the dryer.
And then you got to stay up late to get it out of the dryer, and so nothing wrinkles or gets messed up or anything like that.
Where before I could have just paused my gameplay, took care of business, and then got back into the games, and then went to bed at a early morning hour.
Speaking of the home screen, they are changing the home screen a little bit. Instead of that huge pane where you would normally see your game, they're kind of shrinking that down to more of the box art that you would see on like a normal box that you would buy at the store, or what you would see digitally in the store. Also, they are changing the update process. So there will be 3 kind of tiers to the update process. You'll see the downloading of the update, the verified download of the update, and then the applying of the update. So instead of just one continuous bar, there's 3 steps now. So you don't feel so stagnant.
Like, what's going on? Where am I at? How much longer?
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's exactly what they're kind of shooting for with that. One other new feature is co-pilot mode, where you can take 2 controllers and play them as one controller. So for somebody who maybe, let's say, doesn't have a right arm or plays with different body parts than we would because they're missing different appendages, or if you're playing with a younger user and they just need help through a level, you can help them with that. And again, it's 2 different controllers playing as the same controller. And this is all done through the system level, so the games don't have to be updated at all.
Be developed specifically for that mode or anything?
Absolutely not.
Well, that's kind of cool.
That is kind of the unsung hero of this update, I think.
Yeah, because that's another one of the things, being able-bodied. I know I take it for granted that, oh, cool, I can just pick up a controller with 2 hands and just do my thing. But, I mean, I do have friends that were born with birth defects and stuff when it comes to specific arms or hands, and I can only imagine that kind of frustration. It's not, honestly, something that I think we've ever really touched on it. And I never go, gee, how do you play video games or anything like that?
Yeah, it's kind of one of my greatest fears, not being able to pick up a controller because I've lost a hand or something.
Yeah. You kind of think I'd be more willing to lose a leg than an arm or a hand?
Oh, yeah.
Because I cannot not play video games.
If I can't pick up my controller with 2 hands, I'm going to have problems.
Wow, yeah.
Mentally, I've done this literally my whole life. If I can't do that, I'm going to mentally have problems.
Right. And I know there was one guy, I think he was on YouTube. I cannot remember his name. I know he did a couple little musical tracks, and I bought to kind of help support him on Amazon and stuff like that. But he was one of those that always, I think he has like cerebral palsy, and he was always trying to petition for developers to, hey, create button remapping, because there's ways that I can play, but you gotta allow me to be able to remap my buttons on the controller so I can do it.
This is sort of where the Xbox starts to look more attractive than the other 2, because you not only can button map, but now you have another mode where you can do a co-pilot. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying, for those of you out there who may be listening, who might have some kind of ailment, disability, what have you, it may be worth a second look. I mean,
yeah, if you were not already giving the Xbox a look.
If you have one already, you can look forward to this now.
That's another thing. I will never underestimate the will of what somebody wants to do if they have some kind of disability. They impress the hell out of me.
Oh,
with
absolutely.
Some of the things they can do. I'm like, I can't even do that.
Yeah.
And now that I think about it, actually, I'm going to share a video that'll be kind of down in the app in Entertainment Picks, but I'm going to talk about it just very briefly now about this. I don't know how old this boy is, but he has one leg. And he's playing Little League Baseball. And he's playing the catcher position.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, how in the world are you doing this?
I would imagine that he sort of like hunches down like a flamingo would or something on just that one leg, and then moves accordingly.
Yeah, and then kind of does everything normal. He bats, obviously, with one leg, and then he will essentially just hop to first base after he hits the ball. And then, if he reaches base safely, then, the first base coach will give him his crutches, and then he can run the rest of the bases. Because I'm like, so is he going to have like a pinch runner here, or how's this going to work?
No, he does it all himself.
He gets the crutches, and then he like steals a base. He slides into second. I'm like, oh my God, look at this little guy.
Now that you're saying that, real quick, one more story in this same line. There's a series called Drunk History, and they actually cover one of the kids that go down to, I think it's Cuba, and plays with just the one arm. And he would catch with the arm, he'd pitch with the arm. He was a pitcher for us, and he'd catch and pitch, and he did it all. By the end of it, everybody was shaking his hand, saying how much of a hero he was, and he's like, I love to play baseball, and I wanted to figure out how to do it, and I did.
It's like Jim Abbott. I mean, Jim Abbott, who used to pitch for California Angels, which is now the Los Angeles, Anaheim Angels, whatever. And he also pitched for the Yankees. He threw a no-hitter, and he was born without a right hand. So he's a left-handed pitcher. He had a successful career.
It's incredible.
It is. It's very incredible. That's why I said, just never underestimate what some disabled people can do, because it's just somewhat, not in all cases, limited to what your mind wants to allow or kind of keep you doing. A lot of it is just your mental approach to life. Pretty impressive stuff. Next up, Google Maps is now going to be able to tell you how hard it is going to be to park in some city.
I can tell you right now, I'm going to be using this feature this summer.
Yeah, because in the area that you live in, which is the Hill neighborhood in St. Louis, it's very busy. It's an old neighborhood, old Italian neighborhood.
From Thursday to Saturday night, it is madhouse crazy. Anytime after, I would say about 4 o'clock, it's nuts.
If you visit St. Louis and you love Italian, you have no choice but to come to the Hill for Italian dining.
Very nice, a very safe neighborhood if you're one of those people who are concerned about your safety in the city. I don't mean that demeaning, I'm just saying it is a very safe neighborhood because I live there.
So Google Maps updated on Android with a new feature that's going to estimate how much trouble you will have finding parking in certain cities. So by launching, the quote-unquote parking difficulty icon will be displayed in 25 metro areas around the United States. And there's a link to the Verge article on the show notes, and St. Louis is one of the cities, which I was happy to see that.
A little surprised, actually.
Oh, wow, look at there. Somebody realizing St. Louis isn't just a flyover city. So it lists that, and the kind of downside of this is the information is not real time. So Google's going to also use a similar method for parking as it does to estimate the busiest times at local businesses using historical data. So it's going to kind of give you an idea. They haven't updated the iOS app yet, but I can see it kind of getting
absolutely.
updated in the not-too-distant future.
When you think of maps, it is very hard to think of anything but Google Maps. They're so good at what they do, unless you have a Windows phone, obviously.
Now, then you're just kind of like, okay, Waze?
Right. Or even, is it Bing Maps now or Microsoft Maps? I'm not even sure.
I think they dropped the Bing Map. I think it's just Microsoft Maps.
All right. So anyhow, It's just hard to think of anything other than that. Again, like you said, Waze is another option, but aren't they sort of owned by Google anyway?
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Still its own separate app, but it uses a lot of the Google technologies.
Really looking forward to this, especially when we travel. There are 2 places we're thinking of going this year. It really depends on, obviously, funds and other things, but definitely going to be using this.
For you Amazon fans...
Oh, pick me.
Yes. So Amazon fans, if you have an Echo and you're also a Star Trek fan, you have to be pretty happy at the fact that now you can command your Amazon Echo to respond. Instead of saying Alexa, say, computer, do whatever.
I almost want to get one just for that.
Just to be able to be Captain Picard. Yes.
That's so awesome. Obviously, Echo has a few different commands that you can, I guess, assign, bringing up commands to do certain things.
It's kind of like activate it, wake it up kind of thing. Yeah, so you can do Alexa, Amazon, and Echo, and now you can do computer. That's just awesome. That's just a nice little thing to be able to do. And I know Michael Fisher, Mr. Mobile, on Android Central or Mobile Nations, he's very happy because he is a humongous Star Trek geek.
And, most of us in the tech world are.
Yeah.
I am a late bloomer of the Star Trek fandom, but I love it.
Yeah, I used to watch Next Generation religiously because it would always show at like 10:30. So I would always watch that late showing when it went into syndication and stuff like that. I didn't watch the series as it was live.
Neither did I. So as much of a sci-fi fan I am, it just blows my mind, which actually we'll talk about later, of another thing that blows my mind that I did not take part in as it was occurring, and that's Star Trek. I didn't. I've watched all the new movies now, and I'm definitely a fan because that's just it's in my wheelhouse.
Speaking of the Amazon Echo, Google's Sundar Pichai has said that it is very early days in the battle against the Amazon Echo because we know Google has released the Google Home, which is similar to what the Amazon Echo is. And when I hear this, I kind of start thinking, well, voice recognition and voice control and stuff like that has kind of been around for a long time. Because I remember in the late 90s, I'd bought Dragon Naturally Speaking, the software for PCs that you could talk to type. I could never seem to get that to work properly. And as time has gone by, obviously, I think Google's voice recognition works better than Siri and Apple and even Cortana. And what Amazon does with the Echo, I think that is even better than what Google has in a way.
So I haven't used Echo personally, so I can't speak to that experience. However, supposedly it's supposed to be in some of the new phones, so maybe I might get a chance to use it at that point.
Yeah, you might. So he says that between the Pixel and Google Home, 2016 was a big year for Google Voice Search, but the company's plays in the space still seem to pale in comparison to Amazon's infiltration, courtesy of its wildly successful Echo devices. And this was all kind of talked about in the recent Q4 Alphabet earnings call. Because again, don't forget, Google is a subsidiary of Alphabet. Alphabet's the umbrella company now.
Still
Google's
weird.
Just a little. It is, and I rarely refer to it as Alphabet.
Well, and you know why they did that? Because it starts with A.
Right, it's
they want to
be
at the
beginning. First thing. Yeah. Shows up on the stock exchange at the top.
Apple, Alphabet, Amazon. I get it.
So he didn't give specific numbers, but Pichai cited that Google Home has had some very brisk sales, calling Q4 very strong for the product, and added that the company plans to invest a lot into the category because obviously being able to control your home with your voice, it's kind of a big deal now. It's what a lot of people want to be able to do. They want to walk into the home and say, Alexa, turn on the lights, or Google Home, or Hey Google, turn on the TV, or
computer, turn on my computer.
Exactly. It wants to be able to do a variety of different things. I am really excited to kind of see how this moves forward because this is Jetsons kind of stuff.
It really is. For those of you Disney nerds, the Carousel of Progress, and the very last scene, they have a voice recognition thing for the oven. But while they're cooking a Christmas turkey, they're playing VR games on the TV, so everybody can watch what they're doing, but they have the helmet on and they're doing the game, and they're scoring points, and they're saying, 600, 700, 800, and the oven's like increasing temperature.
Oh,
yeah, and
God.
they burn the turkey because the voice recognition was just off a little bit. It sort of reminds me of that because we're living that stuff. VR is here. AR is on its way.
Voice control stuff in the home is here, and
it's kind of nuts. After 2015, we are in the future.
Yeah, smart appliances and all this stuff. It is amazing, and then I'm kind of one of those nostalgic people that kind of think, man, what would people 100 years ago think of being able to walk into their house and just do some of the stuff that we can do?
It's like something straight out of Star Wars or Star Trek. You just can't even believe it.
All those old, not really Tom and Jerry, but it was made by like the same people behind it, that the House of Tomorrow and stuff like that. It's like, I love those cartoons and seeing futuristic stuff. And
I specifically like that vision right before we know what was possible of that kind of greener, better tomorrow. Now we're not so sure if it'll be there.
Exactly. Yeah, listen to Dan Carlin's most recent episode of Hardcore History, and that'll make you think how the world can change in just a minute. Just a split second how the world can change. I'm probably about 40 minutes into the newest episode, which is 5 hours and 49 minutes long. But that's how Dan Carlin does.
I was going to say, doesn't he? But he'd only drop some every so often?
Yeah, it's every so many months or whatever. It's not like a weekly thing.
No, there's no way.
No.
That would have to be a full-time job.
Exactly. It probably is a full-time job just doing the 2 different shows that he does now. We also mentioned on a recent episode about the NES Classic being, I don't know if I would say modded, but it was able to be hacked by, again, Russian hackers, and they were able to install more ROMs to the internal storage because, again, you can't just easily update the NES Classic. But now, a new updated version of the, I guess we'll call it Hackchi, Hakchi 2. So Hackchi 2. This modding tool now supports the ability to install over 600 ROMs on the NES Classic console. So you can pretty much get darn near every NES game on your NES Classic. I'm getting more and more tempted to do this with mine. But it's one of those things like, God, I really don't want to mess this up.
I just feel if you follow the directions specifically as they say, you'll be fine.
Yeah, I would imagine that I could probably do it with no problem. There's a lot of different little things that I've done in the past that I've been able to hack into, and I've had no problems.
I mean, I've edited the window registry a little bit, obviously following specific articles from Windows Central on how to change things from
to
white.
Black.
Exactly.
Yeah, that same one.
And I absolutely love that stuff, but you really, really have to pay attention to what you do.
I think it would be really cool to be able to have that, album art, save states, and all this stuff, and just be able to, oh, God, that would be so awesome.
It's the perfect console at that point. You have every single game, almost at least, every single game made for it.
You'll have every game that you will ever want to play.
Right. Every game you grew up with, and then some, even ones you didn't. I forgot that they even made Pac-Man for the NES.
I know. That's one game that me and my dad used to play all the time, between that and the Nintendo baseball game. We played that all the time. It was some of the great memories with my dad, and I don't know if he'd want to still play that stuff today or not. He'd be like, get that away from me. And this one is actually a little bit more of the sad news because, as we know, Microsoft has been going through a few rounds of layoffs over the last couple of years. And in this latest layoff, it is apparently taking down Microsoft's best presenter, in my opinion, Brian, quote, like a boss, unquote, Roper. He had such great personality when it comes to just kind of just talking about things and showing off and walking people through the surface and stuff like this. And then, granted, I'm not a big hat person, and you look at the way he dressed, like, okay.
But that was
you get your own style.
Yeah,
it's his style.
It was his style, and I loved that he had. In fact, Windows Central made T-shirts specifically with him on it that say "Like a Boss."
Yes.
I love that stuff. When you can just own it and you don't care what anyone thinks, that's awesome. And I know he's going to land just fine.
Well, yeah.
He's such a good personality. Microsoft's got to do what they got to do. And he understands that clearly through this tweet that, as one of Microsoft folks impacted by layoffs today, my heart, ears, and network go out to anyone else impacted. And then hashtag stay strong, New Horizons.
He's optimistic.
Very optimistic person.
I mean, he knows that as basing on the more recent Microsoft events, he was the one that most people talked about. Yes, Panos Panay has gotten a lot of great recognition for his presentations because he does a fantastic job as well. But Microsoft was never known for great presentations.
They're known
dull,
for the
stale,
exactly
blah 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 blah. Charlie Brown teacher, wah 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 wah. And then you get Brian Roper on there, and he's like, bringing that whole cruise ship director to the stage. He's like, yeah, here we go. We're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and boom, do it like a boss, and you can do. I'm like, whoa, who's this guy? He's all flashy and wearing these kind of bright, vibrant colors, the pinks and purples, and he's wearing his hat. His pants are like 2 inches too short and stuff like that. Look at this guy.
I do follow him on Twitter, so I definitely will see where he lands next. I'm sure I'll hear of it.
I don't think it's going to take long because any company would be smart to snatch this guy up if you're looking for a presenter.
Oh, man, Nintendo.
Oh, you put him in Nintendo.
Whew.
Wow, that would be some fantastic presentations.
That's a winning
right
formula right there.
Right. He'd be all up in that wearing Mario hat with the big eyes and stuff like that.
Oh,
like we talked about last week.
Look out, Reggie.
Switch. Yeah. Watch out, Reggie. Brian's coming for you, man. Best of luck to Brian and everybody else that has been affected with the Microsoft layoffs. We hope that everybody finds a new spot that they feel is going to be a good new chapter in their life.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear. This is a terrible thing. Losing your job is a terrible thing. But I like to always look on the bright side, and I know all these people will find good jobs. It's a scary time right now, but I know things will be better.
So now it's time to fire up our app entertainment and hardware picks segment. Brad, YouTube. Today I found out.
Me and my wife, or my wife and I, if I'm going to be
my wife and I is kind of where
grammatically correct. I don't know why I like to say it the other way, but it sounds better the other way to me sometimes. Anyway, today I found out, by Feed Your Brain, I guess, is a great YouTube video series that you can learn all kinds of things, random facts that you may, never even think to wonder. Just to give you a sampling, I guess. Something like how the Nintendo light gun works, or what happened with the new Coca-Cola, and I do mean in quotations, new Coca-Cola, because
the new formula back in like 1986 or whatever year it was. Oh, God, that was horrible.
Why sodas are called soft drinks. There's all different kinds of weird little one-offs that you're like, I kind of am curious.
Can men lactate? Everybody wants to know the answer to that question.
Yeah, there are real weird ones. There are real interesting ones. And there's a lot of information in there. And, just give these guys a look. They're doing a good service. They're making you learn something for once. A lot of us don't like to learn. I myself love to learn, especially now. I'm learning all kinds of new things that I've never done before and enjoying the heck out of it. So, maybe learn a fact or two.
Today I found out.com. A lot of different things. They got videos, articles, podcast, quick facts, wise book of ways, and articles.
Yeah, and that's their main site. I'm actually going to link the YouTube site as well in case you want to check that out too.
And then you also have another little thing in here too about another blog that you wrote over on Destructoid.
I did, and this one is a little weird. As we talked about, maybe earlier, I am a Nintendo fan that's never played a Zelda game. Bring out your shame bells from Game of Thrones. Shame. Shame. It's how I grew up. I just never had the opportunity to play. And once I saw what maybe was Wind Waker on the GameCube, it grabbed my interest. But then I had cynical friends that are like, oh, you don't want to play that piece of trash. Because they were so mad that it wasn't that hyper-realistic...
Traditional, it's breaking tradition. Link looks like a little kid.
Yeah, he's a little kid, he's a little cartoon. That's not what I want. I want, hyper-realistic, whatever.
I want teenage angst Link.
But the thing about hyper-realism is it might look good then, but in 10 years, it looks terrible. Whereas if the art direction is correct, it's timeless.
Mm-hmm.
Think of Minecraft. It's not the best graphics, but it's timeless.
Exactly. It's pretty much the same thing year after year with all the different packs and different functionalities and features. But hey, it's one of the most popular games in the world.
So in this blog, I sort of walk through kind of my childhood a little bit. Again, some of the games I've played, and maybe why I never picked up a Zelda game. And now, rest assured, I'm definitely going to play one this year. So help me God, because I'm fiending for it now. Because I want to be part of that group that's, can't wait for the next Zelda game. Because there's so many people that are always so excited to play the next Zelda game. I just learned that Zelda games have little dungeons and puzzles in them. And that, I love puzzle games.
Exactly. Well, that's right up your alley. And I know looking through the comments on there, one of the people said that, well, if you like puzzles where every room you go into, you got to move some blocks around and you got to do this and figure out how to get out of the room, and then you're going to love this.
Yeah, so
it's fun. It's definitely something that you've got to kind of think and pay attention to as you're playing through it, and that's across the different variations. I think the one that I spent the most time on was Link to the Past on Super Nintendo.
Right.
I also played Wind Waker for quite a bit as well on, I think it was the GameCube.
Yes.
And so spent a lot of time on that, and it was fun. I love the visuals on that.
Wind Waker is the one that grabbed my attention because it was so unique and different from the others.
Yeah, it was a beautiful game. I don't know why everybody was so hating on it.
And the same goes true for Breath of the Wild. It's so unique and different to all the others. I sort of want Breath of the Wild to be my first one.
It's probably going to be your first one, because I seriously doubt you're going to find time to get away from some of your other games to get into another one.
Well, and not only that, but I want to just grab such a unique perspective on my Zelda career and maybe just work backwards instead of the way most people have done. Some people go from the middle out, sort of like what I did with the Metroid series. I started with 2, never finished it because I was too young to finish it. Went to Metroid 4 because I actually skipped Super Metroid. Super Metroid, although being one of the greatest games ever made, I have never played it.
Wow.
I have it on my 3DS. I'm going to play that game, rest assured, because, that game. Ooh,
I gotta do it.
Yeah, so anyway, if you are so kind, maybe give it a look. I'm planning on writing about a blog a week. Much more than that, it's a little time-consuming. Between coming up with a theme, actually writing it, trying to edit it. It gets to be a little cumbersome, especially editing some podcasts and so on and so on. But, about a blog a week, trying to build a portfolio, as it were.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it because it does kind of get you thinking that, geez, it's like me. I had a Sega Genesis when they first came out, but I never played a Sonic game, and Sonic was the system seller.
So my cousin actually was the one who had the Sega Genesis, and I would play mini games with him on the Genesis, but I never owned any of the Segas. One of my favorite ones was Jurassic Park, just plain Jurassic Park,
and
where
that
you
was
could
one
play
of the games that I had
as Grant or the Raptor.
Yep.
Oh, such a good game.
Yeah, and I kind of miss that. It's one of those things that I need to play again because it was kind of neat. You kind of drive your little Jeep, or you get out and you're running around in your Grant, or you're running around as the Raptor, like you said, and you got different abilities. I'm like, man, that was, looking back, it's like, that was actually a pretty fun little game that I owned, but I never finished it. It was one of the, I never really even played far into it.
We actually finally finished both sides of the story eventually. Yeah, looking back at it, and even today, it's very hard to find a movie game that is good.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yeah, most movie games are usually pretty dang horrible.
They're cash grabs.
Very
to say the
much
least.
so. Yeah.
So, again, you can find me on Destructoid. I'm writing blogs constantly and, a few little posts here and there. So
yeah, consider it a bonus point if you can guess his username over there. And now for our beer pick of the week.
as most of you know, I like to try all kinds of different beers. And the reason this one jumped out at me is because this is New Belgium's take on the Budweiser, Bud Light, Coors Light, whatever kind of scale of the beers.
Standard lager.
Yeah, standard lager, if you will. They call it a blonde ale, but I assure you it does not taste like a blonde ale in my opinion. It very much tastes like a straight-up American lager, America, and it's called Dayblazer. And I freaking love it. This is a beer that you sit by with your buddies at a campfire in the summer, or this is a beer you bring on a float trip. You know, this is a beer that you try getting your dad to try some new beers instead of drinking another Michelob Ultra or whatever. This is that beer. So if you're one of those people trying to get your parents to, or friends or whoever.
Or friends. I got some diehards that won't get away from Bud Select or any Budweiser products.
Let them try this. And I always like to use my wife as a litmus for some of this. She tried this, and she wasn't disgusted right away, and that's kind of the key.
That's a positive.
If she's not disgusted, it's a positive. She's like, it's okay. I'm like, all right, that's a good one then.
There we go.
Because my wife does not like beer. I've tried so many kinds with her, but she just does not really like beer. And that's fine. It's not her thing. That's why I usually use her as a litmus every so often. So Dayblazer by New Belgium. It's 4.8 ABV with 0 IBUs, which is why it's very approachable.
Yeah, that 4.8 is a lot less than what we are drinking this evening. So,
yep, might have a few edits at the beginning of this podcast.
Yeah, we might talk about this beer on next week's episode.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Good.
Yeah,
it's pretty good. We've both been able to sample it, and it's good, and we're going to leave it for next week.
Indeed. Spoilers.
So that does wrap this week's episode up of the Tech Informist, and we hope that you have enjoyed it. Please send your feedback to contact@thetechinformist.com or hit us up on Twitter at Kevin Harvell or at Holy_Shadows or at Tech Informist. Either way, it all works out. Anything else you'd like to throw in here, Mr. Whiteside?
Nope, just that I'm constantly involved on Instagram and Untappd and recently Destructoid. So those are the places you can find me when I'm not here talking in your ear holes.
There you go. It's another nice word for it. So, like I mentioned, that does it for this week's episode. We hope you have enjoyed this and each of the past episodes. We'd really love to know your feedback of some of the format changes as we continually to fine-tweak the show as we move in further into 2017. It's hard to believe the month is almost over of January. Wow. Time is flying.
I will say, being as I am editing most of the podcasts now, I tried to make the transitions a little less loud. They were a little loud to begin with. I tweaked it a little bit. I think we got a good volume level. So,
good decibel range.
Yeah. So hopefully it won't be as abrasive.
And we're trying to stay away from bumping the table because we each noticed during the listening of the last episode there's some little table bumps. So, again, we're still trying to fine-tune. We get a little animated at times because we're having fun. That's what it is. And hopefully that comes across to you, the listener. And we hope that you share it with your friends and people that are into technology podcasts because we like people. We want to talk with people. And also, if you think you might like to be a guest on a future episode, I think we would probably be able to make that work too, depending on what time you have available. Typically, we record these on Thursday evenings at about the 8 o'clock Central Time, 7, 8 Central.
Yeah.
But sometimes, if it comes to it, we can move that into kind of the Friday morning time. So let us know. We would love to speak with you as well. Hopefully everybody enjoyed this. And until next time, consider yourself informed. We are out.
See ya.